Welcome to the Real Estate Women's Podcast. Thanks for pulling up a chair to our roundtable discussion. Here, we'll teach you how you can create a stream of passive income through multifamily investing, and we'll help you to shift your mindset so you can start living the life you really want to be living by design today.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the Passive Investing Podcast. My name is Colleen.
I'm Tamara.
And I'm Crystal, and we are the Real Estate Women. So in today's episode, we are going to be discussing good debt and bad debt. A key difference between good debt and bad debt is whether the money borrowed positively affects your financial health. When managed responsibly, debt borrowed can be very helpful, but when it's not, it can create a huge financial burden on both you, your family, and your financial health. So, Tamara, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what exactly is good debt?
Well, when I hear that term, good debt, good means improving, upward, anything that's like high, except for when we talk about debt, we want low interest. So that's the only thing that's, where it could be confusing. But in any event, good debt, it helps you increase your overall wealth and what you can do and what you can purchase. It goes towards basically generating like future income and moving things forward, moving the needle forward, depending on what you're doing, what business you're in, and basically just good debt helps your overall financial situation. There's different types of debt, that definitely the best thing about good debt versus, one loan versus another is having a lower interest rate involved with the loan. So anyone want to elaborate on...
Sure. Well, I'll start us off on another one. So for example, a type of good debt would be like a student loan for your education. Now, let me clarify that. So that's a student loan that you took out to go towards a certain profession, and then you actually do follow through and become that profession, right? So you take out a loan to become a doctor, to go to med school, and you make that additional income because you have that degree. So therefore, that student loan debt is good debt because it helped you to generate more, more wealth, more income for yourself, for your future. Now, this can also be grouped in the bad debt category because, for example, you go to college, you waste 4 years getting a degree you never plan on using, you don't ever use it, then it kind of throws it in the bad debt. We'll discuss that more a little bit later. But overall, for most people who take out student loan debt to, follow their passion and start a career, it is a good debt situation.
Yeah, that totally makes sense because, if you are taking on debt to better your financial situation, that becomes good debt. And that is, but like you said, Colleen, if it's you get an education you never use, well, that quickly becomes bad debt because it's not helping you financially, it's hurting you. And that also reminds me of things like home loans, because you could get something like, let's say, a real estate loan, you could get an investment property where obviously if you're buying an investment property, that's debt, but that debt is going to make you money. When you're looking in your asset or liability column, that investment is going to be in your asset column and it makes you money. Where if you bought a home, that home could be considered in your liability column, but that doesn't mean it's bad debt, right, ladies? Because, I don't think it's as black and white as it being good and bad debt, like Colleen mentioned with the the student loan. There's kind of a gray area, and it all depends, does this purchase, is it a physical thing? Does it sit in my asset column or liability column? But is it the lesser of two evils? Because if you have a home, yeah, maybe it's not in your asset column. That's where you live. It doesn't generate income, but it's a lot better than renting, right? At least that's you have equity in your home, and you can easily turn your home into good debt if you eventually take out a refinance. You refinance your home and then you use that money to buy an investment property. So that changes your home, which is generally considered good debt from the liability column, well, that moves that home into the asset column along with the investment that it just purchased. So, yeah, I think that that's another, home loan is something that can be good debt that can be in the liability column. What about some other things that are um, bad debt? Guys, what do you think is like the worst debt you can probably have?
Well, I mean, bad debt would be used to finance a purchase that doesn't help your net worth or your income, and it generally has very high interest rates. So probably like any store credit card you get, and it depends on how you utilize them, right? Because if you do use it to purchase something, you save money and you pay it off right away. It's not as bad. If you use it to purchase something and you tend to carry a high balance month over month at 23, 25, 30% interest, that is not good debt.
Yeah. Definitely, that makes sense because that debt, that payment that you make does not make you money. It drains a lot of money. Instead of that shirt being a $50 shirt, well, that shirt's going to end up being $100 if you carry that interest over a while. So that's definitely a bad debt. Although I will say sometimes I it's one of those, in my opinion, can be a gray area. I think credit card debt is always bad debt, but I don't think that makes credit cards bad because you can use credit cards to your advantage. If you use credit cards and pay the entire balance off at the end of the month, well, using that credit card, a lot of people will say, well, why? What's the point? Well, it builds credit history and points. Let's say you have a favorite brand. Let's say you use travel points or a travel card. You're spending money on things you would spend anyway. And there's companies giving you points that you can use to other things for absolutely free because you're not paying them interest because you're paying your balance off at the end of the month. So you might never pay that credit card company a penny in interest, but you're getting free points. It's literally like free money, whether you use it for travel or hotel or cash back, even. You can get like some credit cards give you cash back. So you are making money, paying them no money, and it's just really a win-win. And you're
Yeah.
building credit, which is super
Yeah.
important. So I definitely agree, Colleen, that the first thing I think of when I think of bad debt is credit card debt. But credit cards don't have to mean debt if you use them responsibly. So
Correct. And you're forgetting to mention sometimes the interest free loans that credit cards will offer. I have many a time used Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, interest free for 6 months, interest free for a year. Well, I'm redoing a kitchen on a house. I can take out this $10,000 in stuff I need on my Home Depot credit card. If I pay it off in a year, it's 0%. As long as I'm responsible in making those monthly payments to it, as long as I plan on having it paid off in that year, I'm using somebody else's money for free.
mhm.
So, that's not a bad debt, but you have to use it responsibly.
Yeah, that's
So
that's
then that
definitely a
brings
huge
up
one.
that the positive and negative, isn't there, like about just life in general, that there's always a positive and negative to like everything. And so thinking of like investing, if you utilize like that 0% interest on credit cards, then that might free up, or it a lot of oftentimes it frees up cash flow that then you could use for a different purpose, investing, etc.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, exactly. I agree. And I've done that before too. I've used interest free credit cards to ultimately make money on a house flip. Like I needed to do a project. That was the way I could do it. I could tide myself over until we could sell that house and I didn't have to take extra money out of a bank. So why not? If I can borrow it for free. Um, but the credit card in my mind, it's still considered bad debt. It's still risky, right? I miss a payment. Now all of a sudden that year interest free is gone and they're going to charge me interest all the way back to the beginning. So you do have to know some of those catch 22s on things, and make sure you utilize it the correct way.
Yep. And that's like personal loans too, that I think is definitely falls under the bad debt category because, by definition of good debt, it's something that helps your net worth, helps you generate future income. Most personal loans are not going to do that. Personal loan is maybe you want to make a big personal purchase, you're going to buy a boat or some toys or something. It's not bad to do those things if you can afford it, but knowing that that is bad debt, that is not helping your net worth and not helping your financial life, that's something to be mindful of, because personal loans, they can be great. If you get a personal loan, you're responsible, you pay it off, that can be a big boost to your credit. You are going to be paying interest for it. But if that's something that's okay in your financial situation, then great. You know what I mean? Only you know what you can afford, but it's just good to know the difference, obviously.
Yeah. Well, and then as you had mentioned earlier with buying a home and having a mortgage, and it's an asset versus liability, another one that ranks up there in bad debt would be most of the time auto loans, right? Because you pay $50,000 for a car today and you take out a loan on it. And the second you drive off that lot, cha-ching, you've lost 10 grand in value. It's not an appreciating asset. So you do have to be aware of that is not something. Now, yes, we all need a car to get to a job. Most of us, there are people that work from home, but you know what I'm saying? Most of the time you can't do without a car. So you do need a car to do things, to make money. But did you need a $50,000 car? Maybe not if you can't afford it. So those are some things too you have to think of.
Yeah, it's
Well, with the cost of cars, I don't know, that might be an average cost of a car right now.
Yeah, cars are, having bought 2 used cars for both of my boys in the last like 2 years. I remember when I was younger and you could get a used car that was like half decent for like $2,500. That
Right.
doesn't exist anymore.
oh
No.
People be like, here's a 16-year-old car, 300,000 miles, $15,000, please.
Right.
I'm serious. It's bad.
oh Lord. I know. If only inflation was not a thing, right? If only we could, if the
Right.
dollar didn't lose value, it's one of those things. It's that double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah. Or if
Definitely.
wages kept up with inflation all the time, there's a lot of
Yeah,
things.
it's true. And it's,
So circling back to like home loans, another thing like maybe to mention right now on this episode is, refinancing your house. I think a lot of people are approached to refinance, and there's definitely times that I think it's beneficial, especially if you have a higher rate and you can go lower. There's varying opinions out there. I think if it's a full point, um, percent lower, I think it's advantageous. Just need to analyze the closing cost and affiliate it with it, for it, to make sense. I think if you recoup your costs in like a year, I think it's beneficial to look at that as an option to lower your overall cost on a
Yes. Well,
property.
and when you think about that, 4 or 5 years ago, that's what everybody was doing, right? When interest rates
Exactly.
got down to 2.5, 3%, people that still hold those mortgages, that is not bad debt because historically you've never seen that on a home loan, right? So if you have a
No,
3% mortgage, you hold on to it because now you're getting 6 or 7%. So
yep,
correct.
it's worth its weight in gold.
crazy. Yeah.
uh,
But, then while we're also on this topic, like we should probably discuss some ways to kind of avoid bad debt, right? So, I mean, you preach and preach and preach, but build an emergency fund sometimes, because if you have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses available, easily available, just sitting in a savings account, albeit they don't make a lot of money now, even if it's a percent or something, right? It's a lot more, I guess, I don't even know how to say it, but from a financial perspective, it's better to pull from that than to have to put 3 to 6 months of living expenses on a high interest credit card or take out a high interest personal loan. Or another thing we didn't discuss was payday
yeah,
loans that they just take you and rake you over the coals. But when people get stuck in a bad financial situation and they don't have an emergency fund, you do what you have to do to survive, right? So you'll just start spending on other things. But really, a way to kind of try and avoid that is to build up that emergency fund, if you can, and be prepared for those times.
yeah. I think that's huge, huge, great point. And once you get into that habit of adding to your emergency fund, I think you'll probably also develop the habits of paying off your credit card, at the end of the month, and not carrying a balance. Just little tiny adjustments of habits preventing you from paying that interest. You're going to notice a lot more at the end of the month that you have sitting there in the bank, because you're starting to, spend more strategically and be more of aware of a good debt versus bad debt. And, as Tamara mentioned, those refi loans can be beneficial. And a lot of times refining, if like you're educating yourself now in debt and whatnot, and you have some credit card debt that's sitting there at a really high interest rate, but you have equity in your home, you're a lot better off paying 6% instead of the 20 something percent, even if it is 6.5, not 3%. Well, those credit cards that you might have a lot of, that's in the 20s. So refining or getting a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, that's far less to pay off those big, really high credit cards that you might have, might be a really good idea too. And it's really just that, the 20% versus 26%. 6% versus 26% is a huge difference at the end of the day. So that's also something that, you can really think about in that decrease, that less that you're spending. Maybe you can immediately start putting that to your emergency fund. So continue putting all of that money out of your bank account, but have some of it go to that credit card debt and some of it go to that emergency fund. So always look around and think of ways, how can I reduce the interest that I'm paying? Like if you have bad debt, look at it and think, what can I do? Do I have one credit card that offers a less of a less interest rate, and you can do a consolidation? Sometimes credit cards will offer that if you've been with a credit card for a long time. So definitely be mindful and look at those different options for sure. That can be really
Yeah,
helpful.
it'll over to, elaborate or add on. It'll improve your cash flow, too, from what you're saying, like, to have that cash to put in the emergency fund or just have it, or and then put it like an investment fund. So, and then not to get too into the weeds, and we're all not CPAs or accountants on, on as our professions. But then that's the thing too, is that there is a tax benefit if you itemize, versus, that's not even an option on a credit card. So
Very true.
currently, the current tax code anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with our discussion today, really what it boils down to is how you're utilizing the debt is going to equal whether it's good or bad debt for you. Like how you're utilizing it, how you're paying it back off. If you're smart about it, you can use debt in such an efficient way to help you. But at the same time, if you're, just careless with it, you can just bury yourself in debt. So it really just, you got to read the fine print. You got to know what the interest rate and the terms on things are, what you're buying. Is it worth it? Is it something that's going to appreciate, depreciate? Like it's so many little things to check off to really figure out, is this a good decision that I make this? Is this going to help me to make more money, or is this going to bring me down and put me in debt? And it really, many things can fall into either one of those categories depending upon how you are using it.
It's so true. I think that's probably the most important thing, is to not be afraid of debt, because some people literally like won't get a credit card now. Like, I'm never going to have it. Like we have some tenants that are like, oh, I'll never get a credit card. I don't have any credit. And they're super proud of it. They're in their 30s and like, I've never had a credit card, always done everything. And it's like that they're afraid of credit because of all the bad credit and all the bad things that can happen. But I urge everyone to not think of credit as a bad thing. It can be as powerful as you make it. Like Colleen said, it's good or bad. It's a sword, and it's whatever you choose to do with that power, you can use your power for good, you can use your power for evil. And credit can definitely be super helpful for you in so many aspects of your life. So many. So don't be afraid of it. Just be smart about it.
I couldn't
Do your
agree more.
homework, research it.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's half of the work, and it's, I think between that, the emergency fund, it's
Yeah. Well, this has been a great discussion on good debt versus bad debt. And I hope it just kind of opens up some thoughts in other people's minds, and, some discussions to have about what kind of debts you have and how you can get yourself into a better position financially. And then if you have more questions or want to know about credit scores, we've done a whole episode on that that's out too. So, check out, and that kind of ties into this good debt and bad debt. And having a high credit score helps you have lower interest rates, and lower interest rates equate to good debt. I mean, we could go on and on and on about this today. Yeah, this was a great conversation. So we just want to say thank you to our listeners for joining us today. And if you want to learn more, you can check us out at Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or our website, therealestatewomen.com. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only. We are not licensed professionals and do not give investment advice, tax advice, or other professional advice. Please consult a licensed professional before making any financial decisions.